So when you think of Grover Cleveland, you probably think of one thing, right? He's the guy who served 2 terms that weren't back-to-back. But let me tell you, that's not even the most interesting part of his story. His presidency involved a secret surgery at sea, a massive government cover-up, and a national crisis that feels, well, surprisingly relevant today.
I mean, seriously, just think about that for a second. With our 24/7 news cycle, with social media everywhere, could a president just vanish onto a yacht, have a cancerous tumor literally cut out of his jaw, and then just show up back to work like nothing happened? It sounds like the plot of a movie, but it's exactly what Grover Cleveland pulled off.
And this contrast you see here, this is the whole story. Cleveland's entire presidency was defined by this massive gap between his public image, this steady, kind of boring conservative leader, and the private reality of a man who was secretly fighting for his life while his country was basically falling apart.
Okay, so you might be wondering, why are we suddenly talking about a Gilded Age president? Well, with all the recent talk about former presidents running for office again, Cleveland's totally unique comeback has kind of put him back in the spotlight, and it's sparking a whole new wave of curiosity about who this guy really was.
Yeah, you see comments like this one from a history forum all over the place. His non-consecutive term is the thing that gets people's attention. It's the hook. But as we are about to see, it's not even close to the most dramatic part of his story. The reality is just so much stranger.
All right, so in 1892, Cleveland does the impossible. He actually wins the presidency for a second time after being voted out 4 years earlier. He is the only one in U.S. history to ever do that. He walks back into the White House as this symbol of stability, but he was walking straight into an absolute political and economic hurricane.
Now, to really get his decisions, you have to understand what a bourbon Democrat was. Think of it like this. They were fiscally conservative, very pro-business, and really believed the government should just keep its hands off the economy. And, well, those core beliefs were about to be tested in the most extreme way you can imagine.
Just try to picture it. You pull off this historic comeback election, you're back in the White House, and just 8 weeks later, the entire national economy completely collapses. Banks are failing left and right, unemployment is skyrocketing, the country was in an absolute freefall. The pressure on Cleveland was just immense, and it was at this exact moment that his personal crisis slammed right into the national one.
While he was desperately trying to keep the U.S. from going into financial ruin, his doctors found a cancerous tumor on the roof of his mouth. He was terrified that if the public found out, it would shatter what little confidence was left and make the economic panic even worse. So, he decided to do something that sounds almost unthinkable. He was going to have the surgery in complete and total secrecy.
Just look at this timeline. It's wild. In the span of just a few weeks that summer, while the nation's economy is literally imploding, Cleveland gets diagnosed, undergoes 2 major surgeries at sea, and then gets back to Washington. We're talking surgeons removing 5 teeth and a huge part of his upper jaw, all while he's hidden away on his friend's yacht in Long Island Sound. And this was no simple procedure. This was brutal. When his attorney general came to visit him shortly after, Cleveland, super weak and his voice all muffled, basically confessed how traumatic the whole thing was. He was physically shattered and genuinely thought he might not survive it.
I mean, the sheer audacity of the cover-up is just incredible. Every single detail was planned out. They operated entirely through his mouth so there wouldn't be any scars. They carefully preserved his famous mustache so he looked the same. And, get this, a dentist made a custom rubber plug to fill the hole in the roof of his mouth so he could speak normally again. And the official story they fed the press? Oh, the president just had a couple of bad teeth pulled.
Now, one reporter actually did figure it out. He uncovered the truth and published the story. But the White House launched this vicious smear campaign against him, calling his report a monstrous lie and completely destroying his career and his credibility. The full story wasn't actually confirmed by one of the surgeons on board until 1917, years after both Cleveland and that reporter had died.
So just as Cleveland is secretly recovering from this intensely personal crisis, the nation's economic pain is just boiling over. He managed to keep his secret contained, but a very, very public crisis was about to explode.
The very next year, the Pullman strike kicks off, and this wasn't just some local thing. No, it ballooned into a nationwide boycott that brought the country's entire rail system to a grinding halt. We're talking 250,000 workers, 250,000 people, walking off the job in this massive, unprecedented show of solidarity.
And at its heart, the issue was just simple corporate greed. So after the Panic of '93, The Pullman Car Company slashed worker pay by about 25%. But, and this is the kicker, the owner, George Pullman, refused to lower the rent or the prices in his company-owned town, where all the workers were forced to live. So they were trapped. They were earning way less money but paying the exact same high prices for everything.
So, true to his Bourbon Democrat principles, Cleveland's first instinct was to side with big business and restore order, no matter the cost. He used the U.S. mail as a justification, declared the strike a federal crime, and sent in 12,000 U.S. Army soldiers. And let's be clear, they weren't there to keep the peace. They were there to force the men back to work.
On the other side of this, you had the fiery labor leader Eugene V. Debs, who was urging workers to hold the line, to not back down. The result was a violent, bloody clash between federal troops and American citizens. Riots broke out, rail cars were set on fire, and dozens of people were killed in the chaos.
So you've got these two stories, right? On one hand, you have a president who secretly and bravely endures this life-threatening health crisis to keep the country stable. And on the other, you have a leader who very publicly wages war on a huge chunk of the American workforce. These two events, one hidden and one so spectacularly public, are what sealed his very complicated and contradictory legacy.
His heavy-handed approach made him and his party completely toxic to working-class voters. But here is the single greatest irony of all of this. Just 6 days after sending the U.S. Army to violently crush the biggest strike in the nation's history, President Grover Cleveland signed the bill that created Labor Day as a national holiday. It was a desperate, transparently political move to try and calm down an enraged labor movement.
And the long-term fallout from this was huge. Cleveland's actions completely shattered his party's coalition. That conservative, pro-business wing he represented, it was basically wiped out, replaced by a more populist, rural-focused faction. And that dramatic shift really did set the stage for the political battles that would define the next century.
So, is Grover Cleveland just some dusty historical footnote, or is his story a story about deep economic anxiety, bitter political division, a secret presidential health crisis, and fierce debates over federal power? Is it actually a mirror, reflecting back the challenges that we're still grappling with right now?